DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown form perhaps the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. But what's behind them for the Eagles at training camp this summer? Fran Duffy and I will discuss that next on the PHLY Eagles Show. Good afternoon and welcome to a Thursday edition of the PHLY Eagles Show, brought to you by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. I'm Zach Berman, that's Fran Duffy, and it's wide receiver day. We've gone through the quarterbacks, the running backs, the tight ends, the offensive line. Now we turn to A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, and the rest of the group. And the rest of the group will be a fun premise for the show. Before then, good to see you in person. I've seen you on the screen. We had a little friction with the connections the first day. We figured it out the next 2 days.
Came out better on the other side of it. Yep.
But now I get to see you in the flesh. It feels good.
First time this week. Obviously, it's been a busy week on our end. But, this will be a fun show. It's going to be tough. I was thinking about it. We did quarterbacks on Monday. We did our over-unders last week. I feel like you and I have kind of voiced our thoughts on the state of the passing game. So trying to differentiate those discussions from this one, it's going to be an interesting exercise.
If Bo were here, and we miss Bo, although we see him whenever we discuss Pico, he would comment on the fact that we get to see your thighs. I really have no commentary for that, but I just want to make sure that Bo knows that, Bo knows all, but that we are that we're recognizing. I'm just running space in this seat for Bo. I can't wait for him to be back. But wide receivers is a fun topic here because A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith fall into the camp of the Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson discussion, which is, we'll see you guys on September 4th.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, those are players who we know we will watch during training camp because training camp's a passing camp often. They're going to get the ball. They're going to make big plays. There's going to be AJ catches that the Eagles social media account puts out, and it's like, wow, look at that. There's going to be DeVonta plays where it's like, man, this guy is so good. Are you at the point with both those players that they can still wow you, or been there, done that?
Yeah, I think so. I think those guys could still wow. We talked about it with Lane Johnson when we had the offensive line conversation that you can kind of get lulled to sleep and take him for granted a little bit. But I think when you're looking at A.J. Brown, it's year 3 of him here in Philadelphia, or year 4 rather of him in Philadelphia. I'm doing my math right. Yeah, year 4 of him in Philadelphia. So and only year 5 for DeVonta Smith. So it's not like the 13-year career for Lane Johnson up to this point. So I still think when we see A.J. Brown, look one in over the shoulder and pull it in with his right hand while, name your Eagles backup cornerback is on him in training camp practice and one-on-ones. I think I'll still be wowed by that. If DeVonta Smith goes up and makes one of those insane body control type of catches, I'll still be wowed by what those guys can do up close and personal.
And, the connection with Jalen Hurts, DeVonta's played his entire career with Jalen Hurts. A.J. Brown's best seasons came with Jalen Hurts. So it's not as if you're trying to form that connection, but it's worth noting there was a period last season when AJ said passing is the issue, right? So you do want to see them early on in camp have that connection. It stood out during the spring. The ball was quick out of Jalen's hands. Now, he didn't play that much with DeVonta and AJ during the periods of camp, but I actually think, you said it well. Part of the joy of having AJ and DeVonta out there is it allows you to evaluate the corners, right? Yep. That's a big part of their camp. And, in talking to Quinyon Mitchell last summer, you saw that he belonged by the way he was defending Smitty, right? Yeah. And he was talking trash out there. When there are ones versus ones, And they do have some of those periods. Like Keely Ringo against A.J. Brown is going to be a real good indicator of where Keely is in his development curve.
Do you think it will be Keely and AJ and then Quinyon and DeVonta this summer? Or do you think that Quinyon, since we saw him at left corner, since you saw him at left corner during the spring, do you think that it will be Quinyon going up against AJ? Or do you think he'll see more DeVonta? Because we know those matchups typically are consistent day to day.
Good question. I think we'll probably see more Keely versus AJ.
Interesting, just because of the size.
Yeah, the size. But could be wrong there. But that is my guess. And then the same thing though for like down the depth chart guys too, right? You want because there are our one-on-ones or in the 7-on-7 reps where the first team O will go against second team D or just because of the rotation and like the mismatched numbers, that there are times when you might have Mac McWilliams defending DeVonta Smith. And if Mac McWilliams holds his own there, you're like, if he can do that against DeVonta, he can do that against anybody.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And that's one of the things that is beneficial for the Eagles when you have players at some of these positions that are elite in the NFL, is that is a really good benchmark for the guys that are going up against them every single day. I know that, and even I think about this from like a scouting staff standpoint as well, because, a lot of the college area scouts, this is one of the pinnacle times of year where they are watching pro players. And so it's always beneficial for them to be able to come back and kind of recalibrate. Oh yeah, this is what a premier X receiver looks like in today's NFL. You look at DeVonta Smith or AJ Brown. You look at DeVonta Smith and say, okay, maybe the body type's a little unique from the build standpoint, but this is what a top end Z receiver, move receiver looks like in today's league. When you have that, that's beneficial to your entire organization.
And then it's also worth noting with both these players, and speaking to Aaron Moorhead in the past, even like last summer, I remember him saying, these guys still have things they can add to their games, right? Like they're not finished products. And as you said, these aren't 12, 15-year pros. Like DeVonta Smith, there's always things he could be adding to his game, whether it's the late hands and we've seen him really be strong in contested catches. But I think Aaron Moorhead made I don't want to speak out of turn here. Maybe I'm conflating things, but I believe he said there were a few plays DeVonta left on the field 2 years ago that they wanted to see last year. And last year, just with different circumstances, be it injury, be it obviously the way the offense functioned, I would imagine DeVonta didn't have the season that he probably wanted to have. We've both discussed the chance under Kevin Patullo that they could pass more. But are there elements of both their games that you like? Is there a next step for these guys, or is it just do what they do well and refine it?
Yeah, I think that it's probably more the latter. Look, they're all, you can get really granular and say, I'm sure that DeVonta Smith, he's got goals coming in where, hey, you know what, maybe it's I want to work on this release versus a press man corner, or I want to work on this route being more efficient coming out of my break than what I was a year ago. And it's going to be the same thing with AJ Brown. But at the end of the day, like we said, since these guys are so high level, some of those changes are going to, for people like you and me, it's going to be tough for us to really kind of say, oh yeah, like he made this huge stride this offseason in this one area.
Well said. So AJ, DeVonta, those are the main players here. And we'll get to the depth, but there's one player here that we should focus on that's not included in the depth, and that's not included in AJ and DeVonta. And that's Jahan Dotson.
Yeah.
Jahan Dotson is worth the A block of this show. And for the uninitiated, the A block is the first 20 minutes of the show, right? He didn't quite get into the thumbnail, unfortunately. We'll give you a little behind the scenes here. In the image database, there's no picture I could find of Dotson with DeVonta and AJ, right? There's so many AJ and DeVonta pictures.
Of course.
And they photograph so like there's such like epic photos of them, if you will, right? There's them with their backs to each other. There's high-fiving, celebrating. We couldn't quite find that with Dotson, but Dotson's a big part of this show, and he's in the show description here. And we didn't get to see Jahan Dotson in training camp last year, right? So Jahan Dotson was acquired 2 days before, or the day before the preseason finale. I believe 2 days before the preseason finale. He went up to he He went up from D.C. or Northern Virginia to Philly the day of the preseason finale. And then because the Eagles had that game in Brazil, it was really just a crash course to get him ready for week 1. It was fair to say an uneven season for him. Didn't perform the way I expected. Probably it was the worst statistical production that he's had. Showed some flashes late in the year. That Week 18 game when AJ and DeVonta didn't play, you saw Jahan Dotson was the top receiver for the Eagles against the Giants. You saw the catch in the Super Bowl down the right sideline. There were a few other, there was a big play against Jacksonville. So there were moments, but not enough of them. Is it fair to say that Jahan Dotson is like the most interesting wide receiver for the Eagles this summer?
Yeah, I think that, if you want to say like this summer, I definitely agree that it'll be interesting to just kind of track, and we talked about this very early in the offseason when Bo presented the stats on terms of like how poor he was from a yards per route run standpoint around the NFL, similar to what Quez Watkins was a year ago or 2 years ago now. But I think when you're looking at, again, at this wide receiver 3 position in this offense, you're going to be out there a lot because the Eagles are going to run a lot of 11 personnel. But because of the pass volume in this offense or the lack thereof and the tight pass funnel at the top, AJ and DeVonta are going to get a lot of targets. Dallas Goedert's going to get a lot of targets when he's out there. And so it's going to be up to Dotson in those limited opportunities to make good on that. And when you combine that fact with the idea that, he didn't get here until the eve of the season last year, it was tough for him to be able to hit that and get going. Not to mention, I would imagine a big motivating factor for him coming into this season is going to be the fact that he missed out on the Super Bowl era New Jerseys down in Washington. That they're
you like those?
No, it's ridiculous. And the title, what are we doing here? But I wouldn't expect anything less.
So let's just deviate there real quick. Okay? Look, I have a bit of a take here.
Okay,
I'm seeing on social media great job bringing these jerseys back. I didn't like the jerseys I don't like their primary jerseys.
Yeah.
But I don't think these are like such incredible vintage jerseys. And man, the game's better with having them in it.
Let's call it what it is. This is a breadcrumb for all the people that want them to go back to the original name.
Yes.
This is a way to say we can't go back to the original name, but here you can wear you can buy these jerseys now from the official team store that are reminiscent from that era. That's what this is.
And look, maybe if there are Commanders fans watching this and saying Eagles fans inflate the Kelly Green, like the Kelly Green was a big deal. I think the Kelly Green's it's just a fundamentally different jersey. It's a different shade here. The Commanders jerseys they're going back to, if you were to rank the top 32 jerseys, I don't know if they were, when there were 32 teams, but I'm toward the end there when there were 32 teams. I never was like, these are top 10 jerseys in the league, top 15 jerseys in the league. So I think they're an upgrade over the ones with the gradient in the numbers.
Yeah.
But I'm not enamored with these jerseys.
No, it's obviously it was completely facetious on my part to even bring them up. But I felt the
my
need
bad. I'm sorry.
Just what it's just ludicrous that we're making a big deal about it.
So I thought you were going to say Jahan Dotson would be motivated by being in a contract year.
Yeah,
because the Eagles did not exercise the 5th year option as we anticipated, and he's someone who, if he flashes when the ball comes to him, could have a sneaky market next year. I am curious. And we've probably discussed this indirectly, but directly. This was a first round pick. Were you high on him coming out?
I thought he was a solid player. I graded him as probably like a wide receiver 2-3. Which is that was a little rich for me where he went in the draft. I thought taking him in the first round was probably a little bit higher than I would have, but I thought that he wasn't obviously to this level of player, but I thought there were similarities to DeVonta.
Mm-hmm.
When you looked at the frame, he wasn't quite as skinny, but when you looked at the ways that they won, I thought that there were similarities in that way. He can line up inside, he can line up outside. He was really good at the catch point. I liked Dotson at Penn State, but I thought more like solid starter as opposed to like impact future number 1 or even like elite number 2 type of wideout. But again, in this offense, we talked about this when the trade was made last summer. I liked the trade because to me, you were buying the dip on a player that had high pedigree that could come in and help your offense. And I would expect that we're going to see a better version of Dotson this year. But again, it is just going to come down to volume. It's the same thing when we had the conversation about Dallas Goedert. Goedert's receiving numbers won't blow you away when you look at him compared to Trey McBride. When you look at, the comparison that was always made was him and Mark Andrews because it was the same draft class. I'm sorry, like if I'm going to stack, like if I were to do a draft of who these, I'm pulling a tight end to my team, I'm taking Dallas Goedert, now injuries notwithstanding. Yeah. I'm taking Dallas Goedert as a player, like at his peak, over Trey McBride at his peak, over Mark Andrews at his peak. But the volume hasn't been there for him to be that impactful receiver. I would say it's a similar kind of thing with Dotson. Just because the numbers aren't always there, that doesn't necessarily speak to him being a terrible player. I just think he's going to have to capitalize on what limited opportunities he does get in this pass game.
Yeah, credit. This is the second show in a row where I'm crediting Jimmy Kemsky. It shows that he does good work. But Jimmy helped me out by doing a cut up of every Jahan Dotson target last year.
Yep.
And looking through it, so there were targets to him that were uncatchable balls, if you will, right? Like, throwaways almost. And I thought there were times when the ball went to him and he was making plays on the ball. And that's something that the Eagles liked when they acquired him. They thought, and it's probably smart that you compared him to DeVonta because he's not a big guy, but he does make plays on the ball.
Yep.
And we saw that in the playoffs. We saw that, like I said, against Jacksonville in the Super Bowl. So I'm intrigued by him. What would you like to see in practice? Because this is your first time getting a chance to watch him for a summer in practice.
Yeah, what you're hoping in practice is that Jalen Hurts is able to cut it loose to him and that he's able to come through. Because we know that with Jalen, it has, at least the way it seems from the outside looking in, he almost wants to like see the ball go through the hoop when it comes to the receivers that he targets. So if he has that trust and that faith in Jahan Dotson, now he came through for him in the Super Bowl and was able to make plays down the stretch like you alluded to. So maybe that faith and trust is already there. But I think being able to see that repeatedly here this summer, I think that would go a long way towards that faith being there once we get into week 1 and beyond that.
And as far as him being a vertical threat, is that a part of his game?
He can do it, but I don't think that's going to be, he's not going to be like a plus factor, like as a field stretcher or anything like that. Like he's not, Quez Watkins from that standpoint, but he could definitely work down the field. He's just not going to be a guy that if you're lined up against from man-to-man coverage, like, oh man, I got to worry about turning and running with this guy.
And then this will tease us into the second segment, the B block, as they call it, which is, do you think he can be threatened for the number 3 job, or do you think he's entrenched as the number 3?
I tend to think that he's probably entrenched at number 3. I don't think that we saw enough from Johnny Wilson, certainly not from Ainias Smith. I wouldn't expect that level of push from Terrace Marshall here this summer to try and push him off that spot. Now, that would be good. I think that would be a good scenario for the Eagles, but my guess is that he's wide receiver 3 in the pecking order.
And is that because of the investment or is that because of the talent?
I think that probably both, honestly. But I think that when you look at the talent, I think that there's enough there to say, like, he is clearly wide receiver 3 on this depth chart.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I know in the chat they say I love draft pedigree. This isn't even about draft pedigree. I do think Jahan Dotson has skills. Now the skills must translate, and there needs to be consistency. But I saw flashes, right? And I really liked what I saw in week 18 in particular. And I am curious to see the way defenses play, trying to funnel things toward Jahan, because if you're defending the Eagles, what are you're obviously cognizant of 4 of these 5 skill position players, and so it's kind of like when you played against the Miami Heat during the Big 3 era. Let Mario Chalmers shoot, right? And so my guess is most times out there, Jahan Dotson will have the most favorable matchup. He's not the best player to throw the ball to. And as we've discussed, Jalen likes getting the ball to AJ and DeVonta and Dallas. But if Jahan Dotson can beat the worst corner on the other team, then he will be open. And it's just incumbent upon Jalen finding him at that point.
Just again, realistically, knowing that this team, they're going to run the ball with Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts is going to get his as a runner. You're going to have plays dialed up for A.J. Brown. You're going to have plays dialed up for Jahan Dotson. You're going to have plays dialed up for Dallas Goedert, or that's for DeVonta Smith, rather. So You're 4th in the pecking order in the pass game. You're 7th in the pecking order overall in terms of offensive weapons. They're not going to be going in like the opening script and opening 15 plays, 20 plays in a given game. There's not going to be a play dialed up. We're like, all right, this is going to go to Jahan Dotson, right? It's unrealistic. There's not going to be a lot of those. So if you are Dotson, you have got to capitalize on those plays where you are the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th read in the progression. You come up with those, and I don't know how many 100-yard games he's going to have if everybody stays healthy, but you just want to be able to come through on the other side and make sure that you capitalize on what you can.
We weren't fortunate enough to have Fran here during the 2024 the 2024 draft. We saw you on Zoom for a bit, but we didn't have you as the All-City NFL draft analyst then. So we didn't get the full Ainias Smith, Johnny Wilson experience with you then. We're going to make up for that in the B block today. We are going to find out what Fran thinks Ainias Smith or Johnny Wilson can emerge for the Eagles. That will be next here on the PHLY Eagles Show. Stick around. I want to tell everyone about Cherry Hill Jeep. Cherry Hill Jeep is, if you're looking for a Jeep or a Ram truck, there's only one dealership in South Jersey who's been in the market since 1967. That's our friends at cherryhilljeep.com. They have you covered on the best selection, but most importantly, the best prices. Right now, take advantage of the True Zero offer. 0 down payment, 0 first month payment, and 0 security deposit now through July 31st. Slide into a 2025 Jeep Wrangler this month for $289 a month. That's a good deal. Every Wrangler delivers strong drivetrains, innovative engineering, and quality components that underpin the icon's legendary heritage. I would always see Jeep Wranglers on the road and said, man, I wish I was cool enough to drive that. Or you can pull away in the most luxurious and functional SUV, the 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo, also included in the True Zero offer. Stop in today. Tell them that PHLY sent you and receive an additional $1,000 on your trade-in. I know people buy Jeep and Ram trucks elsewhere. I just don't know why. Drive home in your new Jeep or Ram trucks today, just minutes from all bridges, or available online 24/7 at cherryhilljeep.com.
All right, Fran, here's an impression of me from yesterday.
Okay.
That's me walking into my house, sweating like a pig, because it is feeling like a sauna in there.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is. This time of year, this Philly heat, it's no joke.
So, what do I do? Do I go jump in a lake? It's not going to happen. So, I just got a bunch of ice, held it, rubbed it on my face, stuffed it down my shirt, stuffed it down my pants. Only way I could think to cool down.
I mean, stop being the stereotypical dad, though. Turn on the AC. It's time to fire that thing up.
I don't want to waste money. Be energy efficient.
Well, look, instead of icing yourself out or jumping into a lake, you could just check out Pico's energy-saving rebates. They've got deals on Energy Star cooling equipment that actually work and cut down on your bills.
So, no more ice down my pants?
No, you could skip the ice, save the ice, and you throw in my drinks when I come over.
The same ice?
No, we'll change the ice up.
Okay, fine. That's what's up.
All right, well, just head over to pico.com/ways to save. They've got tips for everything. Heating, cooling, lighting, you name it.
I need to ask you. I was watching the shows back.
Okay.
I was watching the show back and shows back. I always watch them back.
Do you watch and listen, or you just watch?
When we're in studio, I listen on the way home.
Okay.
Depending on when I leave. When I get home, I've said this, I always open the show to see the comments. Before I go to sleep, I check the show to see the comments, and then I will
You don't ever respond in the comments, though.
No, I don't respond. Should I?
If it's something where I feel like it's worth responding to, I typically will try and jump in and respond.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I try to, because when I was, at a place before where I would respond to every negative comment.
Right.
Oh, that's good feedback. How, what can I do to address it? And I always thought it was a little self-pomp, or if someone was good story and I, responded
thanks.
that.
Yeah, right.
Yep. And I thought that was a way of, I read every comment. I'm transparent about that, but I didn't know if I should, if I should respond. I can start responding to them. I respond to emails and Instagram messages. And I got to say, it's harder for me to respond to Twitter DMs now because I just get spam left and right. So it's hard to filter through those.
The lesser of evils on that platform.
So let me ask you this though, because I'm watching it back. When you guys filmed the ad, all right, what did you think? All right, let's play it straight because this is gonna appear every day.
Bo was involved, so there was never any shot at playing it straight. No.
Okay, yeah, I always wondered, like, were you like, let's do 2 takes, let's do one of like the funny, let's do the straight one and the eccentric one, or was it just like, hey, we're rolling here?
So we did three takes, Julia, right? Yeah, it was 3 takes. So
was that the least?
So we did. So the first take we did was like, all right, let's just do one and try it, to see how it fits. And we did the first one, and it was fine. And we're like, all right, we got it, because it was like we each had scripts and like things we had to hit on. So we're like, all right, let's just do a dry run. And then we did the second where we broke. I put my foot in my mouth. It had something to do with the ice and Bo's pants and going to my drink.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see the residuals from that in the final take.
Okay.
We had to take like a 5-minute break in between just to kind of recalibrate, and then we did the third and final take, and then we left.
This is what makes Bo the best, because I'm like, you know what, you can add a little like personalization if it's like today, but if this is going to appear throughout the entire summer, like I would probably stick to like the traditional path.
Yeah.
Because it's just funny when you go to him and you see, he's doing that thing. But that's what makes it great.
The outtake was, I would say, like, Julia, that was one of the loudest, the longest I've seen you laugh. Yeah. It was a bad one. It was a bad one. Yeah, so something tells me that's not the last I've ever seen of that clip. Let me ask you this. So Rich Bobby checked in on the chat, our friend Rich, and said that they had a raccoon in the ceiling at their office. Just referring back to our mice situation here. Yeah. So as someone who lives in the suburbs, peck nest migrate. Okay. These wildlife nuisance. I don't want to say nuisance because it's our world. It's their world as much as our world. Yes. But raccoon, possum, skunk, peck nest migrate.
Oh well, definitely migrating skunk because I feel as if if you're doing like doing like what's the upside, what's the downside? The downside for the skunk is the worst.
True. Yeah.
Right. So definitely migrate the skunk. Raccoon and possum.
Do you deal with all three? Any of the three at your house?
No, not really. More deer than anything else. And deer, I get worried about. Like, look, they were there first.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, yep, but deer's crossing the road and you're driving. That's like a big fear of mine. So if you put deer in there, I might have migrated the deer because like the downside for that is pretty bad. But raccoon and possum, I'm just trying to think here. I guess I would. Am I wrong then to nest the raccoon and peck the possum?
I don't like raccoons. I've come across them in our backyard, especially since we've got the dog and I go out at night. Like we'll come across raccoon in our neighborhood, and they like to go through my trash cans. So they're very. But honestly, we've got all of them in our backyard. We've got fox back there. The deer are in our backyard all the time. But possums are nasty, man. Like those things, I don't know what it is about them, but they just really gross me out. So I think I would agree with you that I would nest the raccoon. But raccoons, they're no joke either.
I'll be on the lookout.
Great divergence here mid-show.
I got to say, I was thinking when I saw that from Rich Bobby, the Office episode where
phenomenal
falls right down through. Yeah. That's I do have like drop ceiling. I always think about that something just falling right down.
Save Bandit. Yeah.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. I'm trying to think of a good transition. This is where we miss Bo. From drop ceilings to potential wide receiver drops. A wide receiver in the Super Bowl dropped a pass. Johnny Wilson,
See, like, what I like is that you were like, oh, I'm not going to be able to find it. And then midway, you were like, oh, wait, I can go this way.
I actually think that was pretty good. Johnny Wilson last summer was like a training camp sensation. you were like, man, Johnny, the 6th round pick is outperforming the 5th round pick here. Johnny Wilson flashed during camp. During the season, Johnny didn't have quite the year that you might have thought he was going to have. So let me ask you this. How do you feel about Johnny Wilson? Let's start with Johnny Wilson, because even though Ainias Smith's the higher draft pick, Johnny Wilson had the bigger role last year. Is Johnny Wilson, like, is he the number 4 wide receiver? Do you think what you saw in camp last year was a bit of a mirage? Maybe he's a better one-on-one player. Do you think it's just normal rookie jitters? Like I made the reference to Bo that at his sporting card this year, it's from the Super Bowl, and I think it's actually the play when he dropped the pass in the Super Bowl. So what's your Johnny Wilson read going into the season?
I think that for me, he is the wide receiver 4, and I think when you look at his archetype, like the type of role that I projected him and most projected him coming out of Florida State was that, okay, this is a guy that's going to struggle to create his consistent separation. He's not, while he has like that unique size, and we're talking one of the biggest receivers in the NFL right now. The moment he stepped on the field for the first time last fall, this is a guy that is going to struggle to create space for himself one-on-one, and then on top of that, he had a lot of drops in college, and we saw some of those drops pop up last year as well. But this is a guy that can play special teams. He was going to give it his all as a blocker. And so you can come in and you feel good that he's going to be able to compete to potentially be a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, and then grow into like a solid wide receiver 3-4. That was my projection for him coming out of Florida State. And I think that's kind of on par with what we're expecting with him going now into year 2. He was the wide receiver 4 on this team a year ago. I think that he should be that for this team once again here this fall. I think that the targets weren't there for Jahan Dotson. Yeah. They're not going to be there for Johnny Wilson. If everyone's healthy, you're talking like, I don't know, 12 targets, 15 targets for Johnny Wilson this year. I just don't think he's going to get a lot of burn in that way. So I think at the end of the day, my expectations aren't super high, but you'd love to be able to see him come. All right, hey, it's year 2. Rookie jitters are out of the way. Don't put a lot of balls on the ground in practice, and feel good about him. That way, if there is an injury and he's got to be the 3rd receiver, you feel better about it.
Yeah, that was really the big question was the balls on the ground, the hands, right? And you talk about opportunities. This is the thing. AJ and DeVonta both missed time last year. Johnny Wilson had an opportunity. Now again, it's ambitious to expect a 6th round pick to come in and like be a contributor week 3 against Tampa Bay. Week 4 against Tampa Bay. Like that to me, that's a little much, right? And so it was just kind of the nature of the Eagles' depth last year. But I thought in camp you really saw the size advantage. You saw the ability to make plays in the red zone. You saw it in the preseason as well. And then the balls were just on the ground too much. And with Johnny Wilson, you're not getting a great separator. What you're getting is someone who can separate with his size.
Late, yep.
And that's what so in camp this year, he had a good camp last year. So I guess it's just picking up where he left off, understanding of the scheme. He's someone who I'll say Jalen had confidence in him last year. Like Jalen was throwing him the ball. I keep thinking back to the draft video that Eagles Entertainment put out of the War Room the morning of day 3. The passion meeting, as Howie Roseman calls it, day 3 in the 2024 draft, and Alan Walking, who does a real good job with the Eagles, is just saying this guy's unique, right? Because you don't see, trust me, I can tell you don't see 6'7" too often, right? Yeah. So that was a height joke. He's rare in that regard, and with him, it's more what do I see during the regular season. I expect him to be on the team unless he declines this year. Yeah, I think it's safe to say he'll be on the 53.
I think so. It would be a shock if he wasn't at this point. And look, at the end of the day, like the reason why the Eagles got him where they did in the draft was because of some of the shortcomings. Yep. If he was more automatic at the catch point, he would have been a 3rd round pick. Yep. Because again, since he had those limitations from an athletic standpoint, he's not going to be that guy that's going to. He's actually a decent route runner. It's not that he was a bad route runner. It's just that he just doesn't have like that secondary gear, that ability when he's getting out of a break to create that separation that way. So if he's not going to be that guy, then you've got to be really good at the catch point to make up for that. And he just wasn't. And so that's why a guy who is 6'7", who tested okay for a guy that big, ends up falling just because he wasn't as good in that area. And so if he can just show to be more consistent, I think that would be a really good sign for his development.
Now, somebody who is not guaranteed to make the team was drafted in front of him, and that's Ainias Smith.
Yep.
Ainias Smith had a bad summer last year.
He did.
Like training camp last year, you're watching it, and you're saying, this is the guy they drafted. And I think Ainias, I mean, I don't know Ainias well, but I imagine he might, you know, he would probably agree that it was not the summer that he needed to have. The Eagles still felt strongly enough to keep him around. He's someone that they liked coming out of Texas A&M. They started him on IR, but they did not keep him on IR throughout the entire year. They expected, and then they brought him back to return, and he was on the team last year. And will he be on the team this year? That depends how he looks this summer. What are your Ainias Smith expectations?
I mean, to me, the biggest expectation is like, look like you belong. Right. I think that would be the benchmark to clear here in year number 2, just because, honestly, to be frank, like last year, he didn't look like he belonged. This is a player who is very much undersized. I mean, he came in at the combine just over 5'9" and a quarter, 29-inch arms, 70 and a quarter inch wingspan. That's like extremely small. Now, 190 pounds is below average, so he's a dense guy. It's not quite Darren Sproles, like short but not small, but he's an undersized wide receiver. Now, the things that you liked about him, he was pretty quick. He had return value, which is less important in today's game than it was, 10 years ago. But he was also really tough. He was really competitive. He made some really impressive plays over the middle of the field in college. And this is a guy that was a 4-year contributor that did it at Texas A&M in the SEC for the entirety of his career. Even though he didn't have like that one like huge, oh man, he had 100 catches for X amount of yards. He was always a really steady contributor. The downside, one of the things that I struggled with him was that at that size, he didn't have like super dynamic athleticism. And again, it's like the opposite of Johnny Wilson, where, all right, well, if you're going to be that big, you're not going to separate. That means you need to be good at the catch point. Well, all right, well, for Ainias Smith, if you're going to be that small, then you need to be dynamic to get in and out of breaks and create that separation, because you could be really, really tough. The SEC is a great conference. The SEC is not the NFL. Everybody's going to be faster. Everybody's going to be bigger. Everyone's going to be stronger at the catch point. So to me, for Ainias Smith, like he's going to have to make sure that he's got to be that much faster, that much crisper, that much more consistent in everything that he does to make up for the fact that he's not an elite athlete. And so I think that's going to be the big thing that I'm looking for with Ainias Smith here this summer. Is he going to be a little bit more confident with everything he's doing? And then also, is the technical refinement going to be there to create space for himself to make sure that he's able to come back on the other side of this and be someone that Jalen Hurts can trust?
Yeah, I think it stood out, too, that the Eagles brought Paris Campbell in for the playoffs, right? Yep. Because when they did that, it was like they're not ready to turn this over to Ainias Smith. And you mentioned the return element to it. They bring Avery Williams in this offseason. Now, they let Britton Covey go, right? So he could very well take that Britton Covey spot.
Good.
The Eagles didn't – they weren't active in that type of receiver during free agency, like the small, shifty gadget player. So that, perhaps you say Avery Williams is that player. But, I mean, better than me, he has fans in that building. I know that. But he's not on scholarship here. And I think this is a year when I think he enters the summer on the roster bubble, clearly.
Yeah. You couldn't come into this year, whether you're Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, Aaron Moorhead, Alan Walking, like anybody, and say with confidence, oh yeah, Ainias Smith will be our wide receiver 5. Yeah. I don't think you could say that with confidence this offseason.
Yeah, and I go back to draft night or draft day for him, where my knock on him, and I defer to you in terms of with the draft analyst, but like what does he do special? Because when you're that size, you need to be special in some ways. If you're that size, you need to be really fast or you need to be really explosive. And I didn't know if he was really fast or really explosive, right? He was more like really tough.
Yep.
And like you said, toughness in the SEC is different than toughness in the NFL. But I certainly don't want to put him on the outside looking in. There was a reason why he was a 5th round pick. There's a reason why people liked him, and he's going to have a legit shot to make this team.
I alluded to it, but it's literally the opposite of Johnny Wilson, where at 190 pounds, he ran 4.55. That's really slow for a guy that small. He had a catch rate of 95% in his final year of college. Barely put the ball on the ground. So this guy was really reliable, really tough. But again, is that enough to hang your hat on in the NFL if you're not going to always create consistent separation, if you're not going to be that vertical deep threat. At times it was there for Britton Covey. Britton Covey was a sharp route runner and gave you value as a punt returner. That's where Ainias Smith's going to have to prove it here this summer.
So let's look then at if these guys don't make the team, who is going to push them for spots. And that will be the big topic that we discuss after this break. I want to tell everybody now about our good friends at, as I pull this up here, I have it here, TrueMark Financial. And I mentioned them at the beginning of the show, and I mention them every show, and it's because TrueMark Financial is the place to go. It's headquartered where Julia went to high school. And what I like about TrueMark Financial, in addition to the fact that it's local, in addition to the fact that it's great people and they've been supporting us, is that they know the ticket to my heart, which is I want my children to learn good values. I want my children to learn how to be smart with money. I want them to learn. I want my children to have sound financial literacy. And TrueMark Financial Credit Union helps you with that because it's the perfect time to set your children and my children up with something that teaches real-world money skills and gives them a little freedom. It's the Greenlight debit card and money app. If you're a TrueMark Financial member, you can get a free Greenlight account for your kids or teens. It's a simple way for them to manage their own money, whether it's from a job, allowance, or birthday cash. And if you think I'm just reading the ad, let me tell you this anecdotally. My son, who watches the shows, said, "Dad, can I get a credit card?" And I said, "Are you kidding me? Like, a credit card? What are you talking about?" And he said, "From TrueMark." And I said, "Reed, I'm so touched that you are watching the shows that much, that you listen to it, because he knows that TrueMark, you'll be able to get your own debit card. They can set savings goals, track spending, and learn how to budget, all while you stay in the loop from your phone. You, as the parent, are still in control, but they, the kid, get to learn how money really works in everyday life. So before the summer rush kicks in, this is a great way to help your kids build smart money habits that'll stick with them long after the season's over. Head over to TrueMark.com/greenlight. Get all the details and sign up today. Don't miss the chance to set your kids up for financial success.
Now I'm going to talk about our friends over at Mando.
Let's hear.
So we're heading down to Florida this weekend. And
nice. We'll get to that.
The real feel temp we were looking at is going to be like, I think it's going to be like 109 or 110 for most of the weekend. So it's going to be nasty down there. And so how am I preparing for this? I've got to have my Mando starter pack. I've got to have everything taken care of because we're going. So I'm going down. It's going to be a couple of our friends turning 40 here this summer. So we said, to celebrate, we'll do like a couples weekend. So we have 3 couples all going down. We're getting a house. And look, these are college friends of mine that I see them once a year from and so I don't want sweat to be pouring out of not just my armpits. We're talking out of my butt crack, out of my belly button, from my ball sack, my grundle. When it's that hot, you got sweat coming out everywhere. And Mando has you covered with all of that. And look, it's all the best kinds of smells that you can imagine. You've got bourbon leather. You've got Clover Woods, you've got Mount Fuji, you've got Pro Sport. So no matter what your flavor, the Mando's got you covered. Make sure that you take advantage of everything that they've got to offer, because when you've got something here that we're taking care of here with PHLY, an offer that not everybody's got. You've got this starter pack that you've got access to. It's perfect for new customers. It comes with the solid stick deodorant. It comes with the cream tube deodorant and 2 free products of your choice. You've got the mini body wash, you've got the deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And so as a special offer for all of our listeners, new customers, you get 20% off site-wide with their exclusive code. That exclusive code, PHLY, at shopmando.com. Shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide, and you get the free shipping. Support our show. Tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
Yeah, so I made a bit of an error in that last Thursday was July 3rd, and today's July 10th. And
True.
So I feel passionate about financial literacy. But if you save a few dollars, You know what you should turn is the golden nugget, okay? Or maybe you make a mistake like that, you know, with your significant other. Golden Nugget, and you need to make up for it, go to Golden Nugget. For the past 30 years, Golden Nugget Jewelers operate out of this very same location in Philadelphia. Customers from across PA to New Jersey and even Baltimore and New York City have come to Golden Nugget Jewelers to find the perfect engagement ring or wedding band. Golden Nugget Jewelers has been family-owned and operated business since 1987 right there on Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philly. You know, I've talked about Golden Nugget because my wife is very interested in getting something at Golden Nuggets because you deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com today and learn more.
So I could have really sandbagged you there.
Yeah.
Because the moment you started doing the wrong read, I knew like, oh, he's doing the wrong read here. So I was going back and forth with Julia, and I was like, all right, well, because she said, all right, well, do you want to do Golden Nugget or do you want to do Mando? You have yet to do a Mando read.
I have. Yeah, I haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah, you have that. So
yeah. I never used that word,
I
actually.
I want to apologize to the chat.
Yeah.
I chose you over the chat.
Because
I know the
that's
chat,
a friend right there.
The chat would have loved for you to have to do an off the cuff Mando read. You wouldn't have had to mentally prep, to get yourself ready, to write out the script. So I said, I'll bite the bullet. I'll do Mando so that you can do Golden Nugget on the back end.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I literally told someone I literally told someone last night how great it is to work with Fran. So that's one of the many reasons why. And another of the many reasons why is because we can be doing a wide receiver preview show and I can do all this prep on these players. But I know, look, I'm sitting next to someone who watched Terrace Marshall coming out of LSU, who watched Danny Gray coming out of SMU, right? And so when we talk about the next two players on the depth chart here, guys who can push for spots on the 53, I would say Terrace Marshall and Danny Gray would be the next ones up. Danny Gray, real quick, had a good spring, and I'm excited to watch him this summer. He was a third-round pick by the Niners in 2022, so we've spoken about Cameron Latu, and we've spoken about some of these 49ers to Eagles players. Danny Gray was with the practice squad last year, and I heard positive reviews on him.
Yep.
And then Terrace Marshall, if you watched LSU when Joe Burrow was there, you remember Terrace Marshall as part of that trio with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. So we'll kind of bundle these guys together. Are you intrigued by the Terrace Marshall, Danny Gray combo?
I mean, I'm intrigued, but I'm not overly optimistic on either. I was not high on either player coming out. Terrace Marshall, back in 2021, he was my wide receiver 26 that year, despite him being a second-round pick. Danny Gray was my wide receiver 33 that year, despite being a third-rounder. Real quick, my final summary on Terrace Marshall, 2-year starter who is 6'2" and runs a 4.4, so there's certainly a base to work with, and he was productive whenever he was on the field. That being said, there's not a lot to get excited about with this player. He has a long way to go. He's not a technician. He would need to be protected early on off the line of scrimmage. He's not a plus athlete, and he fights the ball. Would need to start his career in the slot before proving that he can get off press well enough to play X receiver, where I think his ceiling is as a flash player and an average starter. There's boom-bust potential with this player, and if taken high, I think he would have a tough road to live up to that draft slot. To me, he's the archetype of receiver with Terrace Marshall. We see them almost yearly, where there's height, there's weight, there's speed, but there's not a lot of substance to them as a player, and it's all potential. That was kind of how I viewed Marshall, and obviously it has not worked out for him up to this point. Now, if he can get into an ecosystem with coaches that have, they've done a nice job with these receivers over the course of the last couple of years, you get with Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo and with Aaron Moorhead, and they see if they can try and get something out of it. But to me, I didn't see a ton there with Marshall. I think that with the size, with Danny Gray, at least I was a little bit lower on Gray than I was with Marshall, but with Gray, he had that trump card of his speed. He was a guy who ran 4.31 at the combine. So this is a guy. All right, well, at least he has that. My final summary on Danny Gray: 2-year starter for Sonny Dykes and his version of the air raid offense. Gifted receiver, good size and the speed to run away from defenders with ease and space. A feast or famine player, though, who needs to improve in all technical areas of the game and has the skill set to make an impact on individual plays. A backup outside receiver to start as a 5th or 6th option, likely on the practice squad, with the ability to grow into a role player down the road with time and patience. Developmental backup with boom-bust potential, just has too many hills to climb in order to be viewed as a high entire developmental project right now.
It's great insight there. And, you were ahead of consensus on Marshall. And, that turned out to be right. And the concerning thing about Marshall is he was drafted by his college offensive coordinator, right? Joe Brady. Now Joe Brady wasn't long for that job, but you would think that would have given him a leg up, and he can never turn into the player in Carolina that they were hoping. And so maybe that was mismatched at the beginning because maybe that was kind of a coaching staff pick instead of a scouting staff pick. And so then that's kind of the challenge with the coaching staff pick is that when the coach changes,
right,
it's like, then what? And that coach changed pretty quickly. But Marshall is someone who, like he had size and he had college production. Of these two, I think Danny Gray would have a better chance of making the 53. First off, he was with the team last year. I think that's important. I like what I saw from him during the summer. During the spring. And like you said, speed matters, right? What's your calling card? And when I look at the Eagles wide receivers, they have that prototypical X, like you said, in AJ Brown. They have the silky smooth DeVonta. They have that big bodied Johnny Wilson in the mix too. Who's giving you like that game breaking vertical element?
Yep.
And that's where Danny Gray can potentially help you. Now, the caveat here is San Francisco isn't just moving on from a third round pick if they perhaps they are, but
it might be,
But I did a piece last year on I do it every year, like who's a scout team player who impresses you, and the amount of corners who pointed out Danny Gray stood out to me because those guys know they're the ones facing him every day. So just remember that name, Danny Gray, when you read the training camp reports this summer, and potentially when we do the 53-man roster projections as well, because he could factor into that. So if not Gray, if not Marshall, you know who we're talking about then? We're talking about down the depth chart guys, the guys who Fran Duffy knows better than anyone else. And I'm going to read you 4 names here, and we can kind of lump them together.
Okay.
3 of them are undrafted players. One of them is a futures contract player.
Yep.
The undrafted guy or the undrafted players are Darius Cooper, Taylor Morin, Wake Forest.
Yep.
I need to tell that. And then is it Giles Jackson or Gillis Jackson? I believe it's Gillis. Or is it Giles?
I believe it's Giles.
Giles.
Yeah.
Okay. So Giles Jackson, so those are the 3 undrafted players, and then Elijah Cooks is is someone who was with Jacksonville, and he is a big-bodied wide receiver, futures contract guy who was in that mix too. So while I'm going to turn this over to Fran of course, but just to give you kind of the quick understanding of this, wide receivers and corners, you're typically deeper on in camp than any other position.
Right.
Like you need to have volume at wide receiver because you need 3 to 4 players in every team drill. It's a position that's running all the time, right? There's other spots where running back you can carry 5 guys in camp and be okay with it. In training camp, wide receiver you need numbers. So I hate to use the term camp body because it's like degrading to these players. If you're in that building, you have a shot. Reed Blankenship was once maybe the 90th guy, and now he's doing exciting mics here on PHLY, right? And so if you're in the building, you have a shot. But these are players who are probably longer shots than some other undrafted guys.
Yeah, and the 2 of those 4 that I think probably intrigued me the most would be Giles Jackson. I looked it up. It was Michigan side had Giles.
Okay.
Giles Jackson and Taylor Morin. Morin is your Britton Covey avatar, right? He is the short, shifty, white punt return slot receiver. Right? That's Taylor Morin. Giles Jackson is similar to Ainias Smith. I think when you're looking at, that's
is that damning with faint praise? Or
that's he went undrafted for that reason.
It's realistic. You don't want to say this guy reminds me of Steve Smith, right?
So, I think when you're looking at Giles Jackson, he is similar in archetype to Ainias Smith, where he's undersized. He's not super fast. I can look up what his 40 was at his pro day. Wasn't at the combine, but This is a guy that's been making plays in college football for a while. I mean, his true freshman year at Michigan, he was making plays, and it was like, oh, he's going to be a guy down the road, and it just never really materialized where he took that next step. You know, I was looking back through the Ainias Smith notes earlier, and he was like, all right, well, he never had more than 50 catches in a year, so I think his career high was 53. Never had more than 53 catches. But he did get first team All SEC as a senior, right? So he was always like, present. With Giles Jackson, it was kind of similar to that. He just never had that huge year to kind of cap it off. But he can return punts, he can return kicks, he can line up in the slot. He was tough, he was pretty dependable. So to me, like those would be the two that I would most keep an eye on here as we get into the summer.
And then Darius Cooper, Tarleton State. So I gotta say, I do draft prep, not like Fran does. I did not grind Tarleton State film. I do know Tarleton State's the Texans, and I know they're purple and white. So Cooper's someone who he had 76 catches, 1,450 yards last season. Yeah. I shouldn't be looking at someone else's screen, but Fran has his undrafted players. He did a great job with that. And you can read that on allphly.com. But yeah, Darius Cooper strikes me as I bring it up because in the chat, Christopher W says, appalled by the lack of Darius Cooper love. I simply don't know enough about Darius Cooper yet, right? Taylor Moran, I did see Wake. He's an older player, like you said, but like you said, maybe that Britton Covey prototype.
Yep.
And then Elijah Cooks has been in the league, 11 NFL games. But Darius Cooper's probably the one on this list where I can give you like the least insight on, other than the fact that if the Eagles are signing an undrafted rookie from Tarleton State, it means like there was a scout there who pounded the table and said, this is someone who is a lower level competition, but I think he has a trait or certain traits or certain skill that we need to see in camp.
And Cooper, remind me, he was a player that made it after a rookie tryout?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay,
yep.
yeah. So that's why he actually didn't make that UDFA piece, because he was signed after that. So I have not been through the Cooper film. So I think when he'll be a guy certainly I'll keep an eye out for once we get into training camp.
And then last question here before we get into overtime, which is this a spot the Eagles could add? They added last year. It was clear going, when we did this show last summer, we knew, man, wide receiver 3 is a question.
Yep.
Right? And the Eagles knew it too. And it's one of these things where, like Howie Roseman always says, roster building doesn't end at the draft, and that they're constantly looking. And they go through the entire training camp. They go through the joint practices. They go through 2 preseason games, and then they trade for Jahan Dotson. If there's an injury, you certainly see them adding.
Yeah.
But do you think that the number 4 and 5 wide receiver is on the team already?
I do. I think that between the names we've talked about, especially given what we talked about in terms of the dynamic of this offense, I would be surprised if they were to give up an asset. Now, waiver wires, I think that's a different story. I think if you look at if somebody were to shake loose and that person was worth putting in a claim on, I think that would be a little bit different. But I would be surprised if they were to trade a pick, even though they've got a lot of picks, in the coming 2 drafts. I don't think that they're going to go out of their way to add that position, barring injury.
Well said. So we have a minute and a half here before overtime, and I'm going to tease what you should stick around for, because I saw in the chat they said we've had a lot of football talk today. I think we actually mixed in some Opossum talk and some Raccoon talk, but maybe more football talk than we typically have on July 10th.
People were not
July 3rd.
They also weren't happy with our shorter overtimes the last couple of days. That's that.
I mean, come on, come on.
When we ended the show yesterday, there was a lot of people in the chat saying, "Oh, it was a short overtime." We give
you an hour plus a day every day. Come on. The customer's always right, but
you don't like that pizza, huh?
I just think, you don't need extra pizza in July, right? Anyways, I saw in the chat there was a little Fran talk that we have to get into.
Uh-oh.
And so I'm always sensitive about, you don't want to give up too much of your life, but you also got to give the people what they want sometimes. So stick around for overtime.
Nice job.
So this came up earlier, and I kept it in the back of my mind.
Okay.
There's a lot of we have a loyal audience, as we know. They're very into your facial hair right now, and they pointed out the fact that you shaved.
Yeah.
And they pointed out I think someone said you look 10 years younger.
I'll take that. Thank you.
And so, did you consider rolling with it, right? Because it was getting, look, there were people who liked it, as we saw in the chat. I think there was a comment about it, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you think?
I'm going to send it to Meg.
Do you think, or did you consider like, when you wake up, you brush your teeth, you shower, you look at the mirror, did you consider, or I think Bo says he shaves in the shower.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah, no, I shave in front of the mirror.
Yep.
Did you consider at any point, you know what? It's July 10th, not July 3rd. Let's roll with this here.
Yeah, I thought about it, but as I said towards the end of yesterday's show, when it became a topic yesterday, it looked okay straight up. Like when I'm sitting at my desk looking into the camera, building the computer, that's a little bit different. When I'm here and I'm having a conversation with you, now I could have tightened it up. I could have shaved my neck. I could have done.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to shave, I'm just going to shave. And so that's how I look at it. I'm like, no, I'm going to go clean shaven. Plus, like I said, we're going down to Florida tomorrow. Yeah. Like I don't want to be sporting the extra facial hair in the heat. I just didn't want, then it's going to be itchy. We're sweating. We're doing all that. I didn't feel like dealing with that.
So the comment was from Dude Man 19. Need some Mountain Man Fran. So I presume that was referring to the facial hair.
You found my burner.
Ah, okay. Yeah, you can let Megan know. The second question here.
Yeah.
Because you brought it up. I wouldn't have brought it up otherwise. You're out tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're going to Florida. What's kind of the thinking there? Florida this time of year, you can in theory get a house. You said you're renting a house. You can go to the mountains.
Yeah.
And grow out the beard. You know.
Yeah. Lean into it. Yep.
You can go to. There's plenty of different shores, whether it's Jersey, Maryland, Delaware. I typically think of Florida as a winter destination. That very well might be the reason. Maybe rates are affordable, but you're obviously flying. Good thing is you don't have to take off your shoes. So
that has started now, right?
Oh, has it?
Meg asked me at lunch today. She was like, so because I guess that would determine what kind of shoes she wears to the airport tomorrow.
Okay.
I said I think, but I couldn't say with certainty.
So what made you decide on Florida?
I didn't decide.
Okay.
Basically, it was since it was their birthdays. They were.
Okay.
I was one of my friends and his wife kind of came up with the idea. Oh, we're gonna go down to Florida because they go down every year. So we're gonna go down there. So if you want to join us. And so it wasn't my call. We live in, I don't want to say different parts of the country. One lives in Long Island, the other lives in New Hampshire. So we always find a way, all right, maybe we'll think 1 year we met in Lake Placid. We did a bachelor party in that area as well a couple years ago when he got married. So we usually stay up in this region of the country, but this is the first time where it's all right, we're going to do a friend's trip and we're all going down to one place.
Okay.
Usually we meet at somebody's house and do it that way.
I gotta say, we have a mini pod to tape. We have shorts to tape. I think 4 minutes of overtime is pretty strong here. But look, if the chat was disappointed about it, if you have a question in the next 2-3 minutes, how about this? If you have a question, throw it in the chat. We'll answer it. I have a conscience. I gotta tell you, my conscience sticks with me. So if people are saying we need a longer overtime, I'm happy to do that. But again, we have some other content we need to film as well. So global entry all day. Yeah, I don't have global entry. I don't travel internationally that often. More of a TSA pre guy because most of my trips are domestic. But everyone who goes on global entry loves it. Although when I have gone international, I just do mobile passport. Makes it very easy on your app. Anything else? Claire. I don't know when that changed to Claire, but Claire, I appreciate you every day. Seriously, our loyal audience means so much. ZB,
she's got a big question for you.
Oh, here, let's scroll down if we can, Julia. ZB, have you watched Barbie yet? I have not watched Barbie yet.
The least surprising.
And this is nothing to do with Barbie. Yeah, this is nothing to do with Barbie. I honestly haven't watched much TV or as much TV as I wanted this summer. I've been dealing with a number of things, and I want to watch Quarterback on Netflix. That's next on my list, but have not watched it. Christopher W., how's your sleep in ZB? It needs to be better. Like I said, there's some stuff going on, but I need to sleep better, and I'm determined to do so. Smy Guy, I put a question early on PHLY. Could you maybe put that out? Eclair, thanks, ZB. You guys are my favorite. Thank you so much. Jesse says, no questions, just one thing. ZB, Fran, Julia, thank you. Jesse, thank you so much. And so, did either of you play high school or college sports?
We know this. We know the answer to this one.
So, play is a stretch. I was a part of one of the best baseball teams in the country. We were the Philadelphia Inquirer team of the decade in the 2000s. We were number 10 in USA Today. We were higher in collegiate baseball. So I was a part of a high school team, a good high school team. Play would be a disservice to guys like Sean and Pete and Kevin and Joe and Danny and Andrew and Matt, and I can go on down the list here. Guys, Alex, guys who played meaningful innings for us. How about you?
I played in high school. I played baseball and soccer. Did not play baseball my last couple of years. They did an SAT prep course at our high school, and the prep course was mandatory from my parents. Like, no, you are taking this course. It was after school for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and it happened that baseball. Did you guys have Hell Week leading into the season?
Yeah.
Like it was yeah. So
there's like a form of it. Yeah,
a form of it, right? And if you missed that, you could not play.
Okay.
Hell Week happened during the SAT prep course, my junior year, and so had to take the course. So missed that, couldn't play as a junior, and since I didn't play as a junior, I'm like, oh, I'm not. Yeah. Like they're not going to play me as a senior, and so I ended up not playing baseball my last 2 years. But I played every sport organized growing up.
Me too.
I didn't play football growing up. That was the only sport I didn't. I honestly, by the time I fell in love with football, I was so entrenched in the others that I was like, I'm not going to go out for it. But yeah, I played everything else growing up.
Yeah, flag football wasn't a thing for us growing up. Now it's so popular. Last one here from Player One and the Mudcats. ZB, any chance of releasing a ZB book box set of 3?
Whoa, that's a great idea.
Yeah, great question. It's something that has been brought up to me, and I want to do it. The challenge is that the books are from different publishers. So it would have to be something that I did on my own and sold it because the publishers aren't.
Right.
It's different publishers. But yeah, I'm going to have this fall a chance for you to reach out, and I'll send you as many books and we can take care of that. So this was fun. We missed the midweek mailbag this week because we're doing Camp Countdown.
Yep.
But we have more things to tape, so you always have content. You will see Fran next week,
Tuesday. Yep.
Tuesday. Excited for that.
Shows.
Before that, we're excited for Fran to have a good vacation this weekend. Jamie and I will be on tomorrow. Looking forward to that. We could either continue camp previews or we can do a little grid. So I'll check with Jamie to see what he wants. Fridays, you kind of like to spice it up, a little summer Friday action.
True.
But until then, Julia, awesome seeing her in person.
Of course.
Great job producing. Top director or head of content in the business. Fran, the top draft analyst in the business, also Eagles analyst. We love it. If Bo were here, Bo's best host in the city. If he were here, we would say, as always, we love you. I would say, we'll do better tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
We all silly like the mayor.